When people talk about Blackjack Lanza, they remember the suit, the black glove, and the fact he could throw a punch that looked like it was trying to erase your family tree. But behind that calm cowboy demeanor, Lanza had grudges, real ones. This wasn't a guy starting fights in bars like a discount bruiser Brody. He was smart, he was respected, and he picked his battles, which makes the people he did dislike stand out like a sore thumb on a closed fist. And here's the kicker. Lanza wasn't a bitter old-timer taking shots at everyone under the sun. Most of the boys loved him. If he hated you, you earned it. We're talking about a promoter's son who strutted around like nepotism was stamped on his birth certificate. A golden boy who decided cashing in meant more than loyalty. And a miserable old-timer who could turn any locker room into a morgue just by walking in. No rewrites, no second chances. You wronged him, you stayed on the list forever. And that's what makes this story worth telling. The moments of real, raw heat that shaped careers, split locker rooms, and made plenty of wrestlers regret ever sharing the card with him. Blackjack Lanza wasn't just another pretty face in sequence. Born in Minneapolis, he grew up in the heart of wrestling royalty, learning early that the business wasn't about friends, it was about survival. He stepped into the ring in the early 1960s, cutting his teeth in regional territories before making a name for himself in the big leagues. Lanza's presence wasn't just physical. He carried himself with a confidence that screamed, "I've earned this, don't get in my way." By the 1970s, Lanza had carved out a reputation for his brutal tag team work, forming a partnership that would etch him into wrestling history. His teamwork in the ring was precise, vicious, and unforgiving. He wasn't there to make friends, he was there to win, and to make sure everyone remembered it. Championships came, titles were defended, and fans cheered. But backstage, Lanza's sharp memory for slights and missteps was legendary. Transitioning to the WWF in the 1980s, Lanza found a new role beyond the ring, guiding younger talent as a road agent. In this capacity, he wasn't the guy handing out hugs or advice wrapped in sugar. He was the guy ensuring the business stayed intact, that rookies learned respect, and that no one got a free pass. Stories persist of him calling out behavior he considered unacceptable. And while he may not have been a source of constant heat like some of his peers, crossing him wasn't advisable. Off-screen, Lanza's legacy is defined by discipline, loyalty, and a cold streak when provoked. He understood the politics of wrestling, the rivalries that festered under the surface, and the way one careless comment could ripple through a locker room. Those who worked with him knew that the man in front of the camera was only part of the package. Behind the scenes, he was a strategist, a disciplinarian, and occasionally a grudge holder with a memory like a steel trap. From the territories to the national stage, from championship gold to mentorship of the next generation, Blackjack Lanza's career was never quiet. It was calculated, precise, and when necessary, ruthless. He didn't just wrestle opponents, he wrestled the business itself, always aware, always alert, and always ready to remind anyone who got in his way that he remembered everything. Greg Gagne, son of AWA founder Vern Gagne, entered wrestling with every advantage money and nepotism could buy. Unlike most wrestlers who clawed their way up through blood and sweat, Greg had a golden ticket handed to him. He was a solid worker, technically competent, but his skill set was never enough to mask the aura of entitlement that followed him everywhere. Every match he got, every position he earned was perceived as because of Dad, and that rubbed veterans the wrong way. Blackjack Lanza, a man who built his career on grit, hard work, and paying dues, loathed Greg for this exact reason. Lanza respected merit, not nepotism. Sources, including Rick Martel, recount that when Lanza controlled the Winnipeg territory in the mid-1970s, he explicitly told Vern, "I don't want Greg working up here." Lanza wasn't being picky. He saw Greg as a liability to the locker room, someone whose position was earned through birthright rather than sweat. The friction wasn't subtle. In AWA shows where Greg shared the card with Lanza, the tension was palpable. Greg was polite on the surface, but Lanza detected the undercurrent of entitlement, pushing for main event spots, expecting favorable booking, and often relying on his father's reputation instead of his own abilities. Lanza and other seasoned stars, like Duncombe and Martel, awed and had to compensate for Greg's inexperience in high-stakes matches, fueling resentment. As Martel noted, Greg was never a bad worker, just someone who made life complicated for those of us who'd earned our place. Lanza's hatred was principled. It wasn't personal, it was about integrity. In his eyes, Greg represented everything wrong with wrestling, a shift from earning your spot to inheriting it. Watching Greg's career progression, Lanza saw a system bending under privilege, and it drove him nuts. Greg's presence was a constant reminder that, in wrestling, a last name could trump talent. By the time Greg retired, he was respected as a technician, but never beloved. Lanza's disdain remained a cautionary tale. In the wrestling world, earned respect beats inherited opportunity every time. Blackjack Lanza had no respect for Hulk Hogan. To him, Hogan was the golden boy who prioritized business over loyalty and made everyone else look expendable. Lanza saw a man more interested in cameras, merchandise, and contracts than the craft itself, and it infuriated him. Backstage, Lanza's dislike was clear. He openly criticized Hogan in interviews and conversations, calling him all flash with no substance. Veterans recall Lanza giving Hogan the cold shoulder during tours, refusing to help cover weak spots in matches, and judging his every move with silent contempt. Lanza respected toughness, work ethic, and loyalty, qualities he believed Hogan consistently ignored. Their clashes weren't always verbal. Lanza reportedly clashed with Hogan over match control and creative decisions, quietly undermining moments where Hogan relied on backstage politicking to get ahead. Lanza's disdain extended to Hogan's approach to younger talent, which he saw as self-serving rather than developmental. Even after their in-ring careers slowed, Lanza maintained his critique. In interviews, he described Hogan as someone who put business over relationships, which left a lasting impression on the locker room. The heat wasn't just personal, it was professional. Lanza refused to participate in manufactured hero worship, and never let Hogan's public image fool him. For decades, Lanza carried that frustration with him. Hogan's rise and popularity were constant reminders of a man who cut corners to get ahead, and Lanza never hid his opinion. It was raw, honest, and unsparing. When you look back at the wild history of wrestling, most of the big names left a trail of grudges, broken friendships, and locker room drama that people still gossip about decades later. But Blackjack Lanza, he's the opposite story. For a guy who wrestled everywhere from the AWA and later worked behind the curtain in the WWE, his name almost never comes up in shoot interviews as a guy who caused problems. That in itself is rare. He managed to move through the carnage of wrestling's political wars without stepping on too many toes. He worked with the biggest egos, chaotic personalities, and all the drama of the territory system, yet left behind almost no enemies. Even when he transitioned to an agent role, where plenty of veterans made lifelong enemies, he kept it professional. He earned the respect of the boys, but avoided the baggage that usually comes with it. He navigated decades of egos, locker room tension, and backstage maneuvering with a careful, calculated approach. While some peers racked up grudges over creative disagreements or in-ring mistakes, he rarely became a target of resentment. He understood when to push and when to step back, maintaining relationships across multiple promotions and generations of talent. This ability to stay neutral yet respected allowed him to operate in a business notorious for grudges, betrayals, and bitterness. Even as wrestlers rose and fell around him, he remained a figure whose professionalism outlasted petty conflicts, leaving a legacy defined by quiet competence rather than controversial clashes. Well, that's all the hatred wrapped up. Blackjack Lanza, feared in the ring, rarely carried heat outside it. Quiet, precise, and professional. If you enjoyed seeing real wrestling grudges get roasted, hit like, slam, subscribe, and stay tuned. Next time, more backstage truths, more savage stories, and more wrestlers getting called out the way they deserved. Thanks for watching.